Yes, hello again. Today is the 26th of April 2015, and this video is about the 9th card in the Celtic Cross spread. So the first 6 cards are kind of set in a circle, right, and like this. And then the 7th goes at the bottom of a new column on the right of the spread as you look at it on a table. The 8th goes above the 7th, and the 9th goes above the 8th. Right, so we're getting near the top of the column. And this 9th card, we're going to say, shows the hopes and fears. So people often find this meaning confusing, and they want to know, okay, does the card show what you hope for, or does it show what you're afraid of? And they're confused about it, and this confusion and uncertainty about what the card is meant to show, it can be a reason why maybe why the Celtic Cross isn't that well, it's mentioned in most books, but a lot of people can't stand the Celtic Cross and never use it. And I think it's partly because of the meanings that are attached to the different positions. So with this in mind, I want to tell you a couple of approaches that you might take in dealing with the 9th house as hopes and fears. And the first is that you look at the card in the 9th position and decide if it shows hopes or fears. Okay, so if the card shows, if it's a card of promise and development, like the 6 of Batons, card of victory, or the 3 of Batons, the fellow looking into the future. If it shows promise and development and improvement, okay, it's probably going to show what the questioner is hoping for, to do with the question that's been asked. Right, so you look at that 9th position, the card in the 9th position, and you compare it with the cards that have gone before, and you figure out the odds of the hopes coming true. So let's say you've got the Sun in the 9th position. So you hope the questioner, when it comes to the question, is hoping for success and happiness, let's say in comfort, for instance, based on the Sun being there. And this, because I made a trump, and because it's a Sun, this hoping for success, that on its own can be enough to make the success come about. Because confidence can breed success, or confidence can bring success, even if other cards earlier in the spread have shown difficulty or delay. Right, so let's say you've got the Ace of Cups in the 9th position. You're hoping for, and because the Ace of Cups is generally a good card, we would say it shows a hope, right? So you're hoping for a new beginning, or the start of a new relationship. It's an Ace, and it's Cups for love and so on. So what you would do in this case is you look at the cards that have come before, you re-examine those earlier cards that you've already looked at to see if this new relationship is going to come about. So if earlier there were indications of changes in relationships, or maybe disappointment in relationships, then the hope in the 9th position is probably going to work out because the person is ready for something new and better. Right, whereas if the earlier cards had shown they were quite happy in their relationship, the Ace of Cups, something new, doesn't really fit in with what's gone on before. On the other hand, if the card in the 9th position shows confinement or difficulty of some sort, then it's going to make sense to look at this card as pointing to what the person is afraid of. Okay, so a positive card here, it's a hope. If it's a negative card, whatever negative would mean, then it's a fear. So let's say you've got the 3 of Swords here. So the questioner is imagining a breakup, 3 of Swords, or sadness of some sort. So at this point, I think the reader can help by talking about how to deal with sadness, right? Or you can discuss different approaches to difficulties in relationships, so that the person, they at least have some idea of what to try if they have to deal with a problem. And that point makes me wonder about really what is a tarot reader and what's a tarot reading about. I'm not so sure that the psychic approach is that useful, right? So the reader might tell you that, on Tuesday evening at 7:30, you're going to get a phone call from somebody called Bill, and it's going to change your life, right? So that might be, that kind of approach might be okay. And on Tuesday night, Bill might actually phone you and tell you something that's going to change your life. But really, if it does happen, it's quite impressive. But the questioner isn't that much wiser, right? So they may know what's going to happen, but they still have to deal with it. And they may not know how, because Bill offers something that's going to change your life. Do you take it? If you do take it, what do you have to do? What do you have to learn? What are you going to lose if you take it? Whereas if you don't take it, are you going to be that much worse off? So the psychic hasn't really helped you out with those kind of follow-up questions. Whereas another approach, I think a reader should be like a source of information and suggestions for the questioner, so that when questioners are faced with a problem, the reader can point out something that they may not have noticed, or the reader can give the questioner ideas about what to do, or the reader can tell the questioner about what worked for other people in a similar situation that could work for them, right? Or maybe the reader educates the questioner a bit so that they can then handle the situation with more confidence, or give the questioner an idea of what is also, or what is really going on with their life. And I think that's useful, because the questioner then leaves the reading fitter or better able to deal intelligently with the kinds of situations that are going to come up in their life. So with that type of approach in mind, let's say the Ten of Swords, you find the Ten of Swords in the 9th position, right? And that's kind of a fear. Okay, so let's say we decide from the Ten of Swords here, the questioner is afraid of failure and afraid of defeat. So maybe the reader points out, or can put the questioner, or put the situation into a proper context, so that the questioner isn't overwhelmed by the trouble that's going to be ahead. Or maybe the reader, because 10 is 1 plus 0 gets to 1 again, maybe the questioner or the reader points out the value of making a fresh start. So even though you may not know what the future holds, it's better than just repeating the past that didn't work, that got you into this difficult situation that you're going to be facing in the future. So that's one approach to the 9th position, or the card in the 9th position, where if it's a good card, it's a hope. If it's a bad card, it's a fear. But there's another one that you might like to use, depending on the question and the questioner, and it's this. If you think about it, a hope is referring to something in the future that hasn't happened yet, right? In the same way, a fear, if you're afraid of something, it's referring to something in the future that hasn't happened yet. Okay, so somebody may have been divorced, right? And you say, what do you want? And they say, I hope to get married again, but at the same time, I'm maybe a little bit afraid that it's not going to work out again, right? The hope and the fear are the same thing, or are connected. Or maybe somebody hopes to get a promotion, but at the same time, they're a little bit afraid that they won't be up to the job, or that the job is going to be more than they can handle. So maybe this 9th position is not so much an either-or situation. It's not really either a hope or a fear, but it's both hopes and fears. So it's not one or the other, but it shows your expectations, what you hope for, what you're afraid of, or what you think is going to happen in the future. So you may be happy about what you think is what you see coming up, so you're hopeful. Or you're not happy about what you expect or what you see is coming up, so you're fearful. And so what the reader does is you look at the card to get an idea of what state of mind the questioner is in when it comes to seeing the future, or thinking about the future, or future situations, future conditions. So in this way, the card in the ninth position shows the personal point of view of the questioner, the personal point of view about the future, and the thoughts that the questioner has about what's coming up. And these thoughts, these expectations, they may be quite balanced and reasonable and accurate and correct about what's coming up, but they can also be unrealistic and they can be impossible. And you'll be able to know better when you see the card in the 10th position, because it shows what will come. I mean, it shows the final outcome. Okay, so you can compare the expectation of the questioner with the reality shown by the 10th card to get an idea of how realistic the questioner is about their own future. But we haven't seen the 10th card yet. So with the 9th, it's referring to future conditions, so we can relate the card in the 9th position back to the 5th, showing what may come, and back to the 6th card, because it shows what will come. And we look at those cards and see if they tell the same story as the 9th position, or if they contradict each other. Then if they contradict, you've got an idea that the person's expectations are really quite unreasonable. So you have to judge, looking at the 5th, especially the 6th and the 9th, you get to judge if the person's expectations are logical and reasonable, or if they're way off. Right? So if you've got the Sun in the 9th position, the person is optimistic and hopeful about the future. And as I mentioned before, the confidence on its own may be enough to overcome any problem that maybe came up with the 6th card, right, which shows what will come. So the reader, though, at this point, because it's a Sun card and the nature of the Sun card, they may mention the value or the benefit of having a plan for the future, right? So the question, and maybe make sure that the questioner has a plan. And if they tell you what their plan is, you can relate points that the questioner makes to cards in the spread, and they can confirm what the questioner is going to do and show that it's going to work. Or if earlier cards contradict the plan, you can maybe get the questioner to adjust what they're planning to do, so that a particular situation is avoided if it's a difficulty that has shown up earlier in the reading. So that was the Sun card in the 9th position, but maybe you get the Devil here. So the questioner is expecting that things are going to be tough, or that they're going to be chained to a person or a situation, and they're going to have a tough time getting out of it if they don't like it. So that's from the Devil card, and just the picture on the Devil card. So again, the reader can refer to earlier cards to see how realistic this position is. Right, there may be no need, but let's say you get good cards earlier, there may be no need for the questioner to imagine being trapped. But we're sort of programmed to see problems, maybe where none exist, but to also expect the worst. Okay, so you can, if you find that things have been easier or good earlier on, then you can reassure the questioner and get them to relax, instead of worrying needlessly about what's going to happen, and perhaps getting in their own way by worrying, and creating a problem in their own mind that then they experience, but they experience it because they created it for themselves, and there was maybe no need for it. But it may be with the Devil in the 9th position that their imagining being trapped is going to be a likely reality, based on the earlier cards that came up. So what you can do then is you can discuss ways out of problems. Or the reader can suggest what the questioner might do so they don't get stuck or trapped. Or maybe the reader points out some warning signs of trouble ahead that the questioner ought to pay attention to, because it's not going to go away by itself. Because I'm sure that's happened to all of us. Something happened and we thought, I ought to do something about it, or I ought not to let it, leave it untouched. If I do something about it now, I can nip it in the bud, let's say, but you don't. And that's like a warning sign that you ignored. And so with the devil in the ninth position, maybe the reader could point out or encourage the questioner to pay attention to warning signs and do something about them, and not just avoid it and ignore it and keep the finger crossed that it's going to go away, because it's not. Okay, that I think is it for the moment with the ninth card. So if you think of it as showing what the questioner hopes for or is afraid of, that's going to be fine. That'll give you a good workable reading. Or maybe see it, the ninth card, as what the questioner expects in the future, knowing that our personal point of view about the future can be correct, and can be the same as what will actually happen. But our personal point of view can be wrong, and it can give us a false impression of what the future holds. So sometimes our personal sense of power isn't enough to control things. Dynamictarot.com is up and running, and I added a couple of things this morning about the Four of Cups discussion, as well as a little bit more about the Thomas Troward section. So you might find something useful there. And next week, I should be uploading the video for the 10th card in the Celtic Cross, and that's going to be the 3rd of May. So until then, have a good week. If you have comments or questions, leave them down below or email me, and I would hope to deal with them that way. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.